The stories begin on a bright, starry night, where a group of hooded individuals are seen traveling through the desert. There, as the group continues its journey, one of the people turns back to look at the child she has spotted and asks for his name. Suddenly, a white-haired man and a beautiful woman are seen sleeping on the bed together. Both of their eyes sparkle like a red ruby. As soon as the man has this strange dream, he wakes up in a cold sweat with this woman by his side, whereas the woman welcomes this sleepy head back to Earth. Seeing her there, the man becomes distraught, asking who the hell this woman is and what on earth she is doing in his room. Immediately, he creates some distance between him and her, but the girl seems to be a bit worried and asks if the man truly doesn't remember what happened, despite it happening just a few hours ago. Suddenly, as soon as the girl says this, the man begins recalling what had happened. It is seen that this man is in fact a movie star, who went to attend his movie's showing. That is where he spotted this girl in all black. Although he remembers that he followed her, he cannot remember the reason, thinking this girl must have done something to him. Angrily, he asks what really happened, but the girl seems to be indifferent, happy even. With a small smirk on her face, she claims that she has done nothing. Nothing, except granting this white-haired man's desire come to fruition. According to her, he is so in love with acting that he wants to act forever. He was sure that this is his dream, his life goal, and, seeing his determination and dedication, the woman has decided to make his wish come true. Hearing this, the man releases that he might have messed up. He immediately tries to fall his neck, suspecting the worst, but the woman tells him to relax, stating that the bite marks have already healed up. With this, she proclaims that this man, starting now, is a vampire, as the man himself reveals the marks on his neck and the vampire-like fangs he has acquired. Suddenly, he begins to have flashbacks of the previous night. In short bursts, he begins remembering the conversation he had with this supposed vampire. Last night, he was chatting with her, telling her about how acting is magical. He expresses how he can live the life of other people, their emotions and their feelings, while playing a specific character, claiming that the reason he lives is for the thrill of it. As the woman silently listens to his desires and love for acting, she begins to smirk. Suddenly, she asks if he would like to continue acting forever. But he just takes it as a joke, claiming that of course, no one can act for eternity. However, the woman appears to not be joking. She tells him that she isn't too sure of this. Slowly, she comes closer to him, telling him to look into her eyes. This brings us back to the present, where the man is visibly terrified. As he trembles with fear, he is distraught after learning that this woman was talking directly into his head, commenting on how she talked without moving her lips. In response, the woman claims that this is one of the perks of being a vampire. Why would she scared or hurt his prey when a telepathic talk can get the job done easier and quicker? On the other hand, the man begins to feel and notice the difference between how he is now and how he used to be. His heart is not beating, he doesn't feel hot or cold, rather, he cannot feel anything anymore. This makes him enraged, and he asks what the hell this woman doesn't do to him. But she just tells him that he will be alright. She tells the man, who is finally introduced as Nicholas, that she will be by his idea whenever the change is much. But Nicholas doesn't want to hear anything. Calling her an obsessed freak, he deems her responsible for ruining his life. Suddenly, a figure appears behind him. This figure is seen to be another vampire by the name of Callie, who stabs Nicholas in the heat and leaves him to bleed. With this, she heads towards Elsie, the woman, and begins criticizing her actions. She asks why Elsie used her powers to turn this famous mortal into a vampire when Callie brought her to meet her favorite actress, stating that his managers and other staff will be looking for him. She condemns Elsie, asking why she would do such a thing once again. But of course, she uses her feminine charm and sad puppy eyes to get about the situation. Seeing her sad, Callie pets her on the head, telling her that a stabbed heart is not enough for a vampire to be offed, as she might now. However, this has put them in quite a pickle. According to him, Elsie is under the care of another vampire by the name of Eugen. Because of her actions, they now have two major issues to deal with: Eugen's rampage and Agoras's, another vampire, discipline. But Elsie is not sure they should call Agoras right away, asking what they would even tell him. But Callie claims that this is the best possible move. If they delay things further, the consequence will be harsher, and besides, it is better to get advice on what to do before Eugen finds out. Suddenly, the door to the room slams open. From behind, the figure of a man appears, who seems to have kicked open the door. As the door slams open, none other than Eugen himself appears. Once inside, he hopes that Elsie is satisfied with her visit to meet her favorite actor. However, upon closer inspection, he begins to smell the lingering scent of vampirism on Nicholas. Realizing this, he decides to swiftly deal with the situation and then find out what on earth is happening. With determination, he pulls out his weapon and immediately moves to attack Nicholas. However, Elsie gets in the way, using her body as a shield to protect him. Not only that, but Callie also intervenes, using her sword to stop Eugen's swing. Seeing this, Eugen becomes enraged, questioning how dare a servant to question his decisions, and announces that this irregularity they are dealing with would be easier to dispose of entirely. But Callie refuses this idea, claiming that Eugen is acting recklessly, and this is not a decision to be made lightly. Moreover, she reveals that he has already called Agoras. Finally, the relationship between all of them is revealed. It is unveiled that Agoras is Elsie's father, and that Eugen and Elsie are engaged, making Agoras Eugen's father-in-law. Furthermore, Callie is the servant of Agoras, and Elsie by extension. Hearing him say this, Eugen has no choice but to sheath his sword. Trying to hide his rage, he claims that he will listen to what his father-in-law has to say about his fiancée's whims. With this, the tension in the air settles somewhat. However, Elsie keeps staring daggers at Eugen, and eventually, Agoras picks up the phone. As he answers, the patriarch is surprised that Callie has called, deeming it must be something important. Callie then explains what has happened. Elsie has turned from a famous mortal into a vampire, and for the moment, she has been neutralized. Upon hearing this, Agoras falls silent momentarily, probably contemplating how foolish his daughter can be. Nevertheless, he orders Callie to bring this newborn vampire to the Hattonman mansion, leaving the stake in his heart there. Moreover, he tells Callie to call for a captain to escort them. This is because Elsie's blood possesses some strange powers. Additionally, since this mortal was famous, his disappearance will cause a commotion, but they will be able to handle whatever comes their way within their home turf. Not only that, Agoras announces that the boy will be allowed to live if he cooperates, and Callie accepts his orders. Telling her to keep her daughter safe and monitor Eugen's actions, Agoras ends the call, and Callie relays his master's orders to the others. However, Eugen is not satisfied with the outcome. He deems this rogue irregular unfit for such attention. But Callie threatens him, asking if Eugen really wants to go against the word of Patriarch Agoras, of all people. This makes Eugen second-guess his next move, and he backs down. Meanwhile, Elsie welcomes Nicholas into the world of the night. And so, after some time passes, Nicholas finally wakes up from his slumber, only to find himself in an unfamiliar place with Callie by his side. As he looks at his surroundings, he sees Callie ominously cleaning his blade. Once Nicholas finally gets a hold of himself, he glances towards his chest, which was pierced as far as he remembered. However, the wound seems to have completely healed. This shocks Nicholas, but Callie tells him to not worry, stating he will get accustomed to these changes soon enough. With this, Nicholas finally begins his questions. He asks Callie who she is and what she has done to him, and Callie introduces herself as his nanny for today. Moreover, after sheathing her sword, he then gives the former actor a change of clothes, claiming that it would be best for him to take the recent experiences he has endured as an opportunity to grow. But Nicholas still has more questions, like where on earth is he? To this, Callie reveals that they are currently in the Hatton Man mansion, hearing which leaves Nicholas speechless. It is revealed that Hatton Man is the wealthiest family in Einchester, but it is a far cry from the facade they put up for the mortal world, as Nicholas is soon to see. With this, Nicholas finally has a moment to come to terms with realities. Everything that has happened has been true. He asks what the name of the crazy girl who started all this mess is and learns that she is called Elsie. Not only that, but Callie also claims that all will be explained soon enough. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the mansion, Elsie is seen facing the consequences of her actions. Being faced directly by her father, the patriarch Agoras himself, she is visibly terrified. There, Agoras claims that his daughter has much to answer for. Despite him generously allowing her to participate in a mundane mortal event, she repaid that trust by wandering off and transforming a human. Back to Nicholas, who gets changed into the clothing provided to him and follows Callie, along with Eugen, to a magnificent door leading to the main throne room. There, Callie tells him to not enter until he is invited. At the gate, Nicholas is still thinking about his situation. It's all too much for him to wrap his head around. Never in his life has he even felt so small and worthless. Not just the vampires, immorality and their superpowers, it is Eugen in particular. It is seen that before coming here, Eugenia and Nicholas talked face to face for a while, but Eugen seems to be very hostile against this newborn. Eventually, Agoras invites him to the throne room, and he enters, getting to meet the illustrious patriarch of the crowned house of Hatton Man and Lord of Einchester, Agoras Hatton Man. As they enter, Eugen immediately bows his head and gives his regards to the Lord, but Nicholas doesn't seem too pumped up to suck this guy's behind. Even Eugen criticizes his action, telling him to greet the patriarch and asks if he has no manners. But Nicholas refuses. Instead, he has something better plan in mind. According to him, to be appreciated by a nobleman, one must bring him something truly valuable. But he doesn't really have something valuable to a leader of a vampire society. As such, as elegantly as he can, he steps forth and offers his greetings and respect to the Hatton Man house. Moreover, he formally introduces him and thanks Agoras's invitation to this place. His first impression seems to go over well, at least with Elsie, who immediately begins fawning over him. However, Agoras is impressed by his presentation too. He claims that Nicholas lives up to the stories his daughter tells him and apologies that they couldn't meet in more pleasant circumstances. He states that this messy situation was all caused by the irresponsibility of Elsie, his child, and the negligence of those who were ordered to protect her. Nevertheless, in this whole mess, Nicholas was the one who has no choice. Because of that, it has now become Agoras's interest to find a place for Nicholas in their society and teach him what it really means to be a vampire. At this, Nicholas raises his head and stares back at the Lord, while Elsie gently waves at him. However, Eugen is against this approach. He claims that this is just a mere irregular vampire related to Agoras's family. But the patriarch himself shuts him down, asking if he dares question his authority. He states that it is the link to his family that compels him to take this action. Not only that, but Eugen has also done a great disservice to Elsie by not taking her side in such a problematic situation. Although, as he is not in the Hatton Man family, Agoras cannot discipline Eugen himself, he tells him that his actions have been reported to his respective patriarch. Hearing this, Eugen looks towards Elsie for assistance, but she turns her head, refusing to even look at him. This makes Eugen angry, and he promptly dismisses himself from the room. Nicholas has also learned for the first time that Eugene and Elsie are engaged. As Eugen leaves, Agoras turns his attention towards Nicholas. He announces that by tradition, a very newly turned vampire has the right to prove themselves worthy of their place in our society. With this, he assigns Elise, his progenitor, the responsibility to introduce him to their culture. This makes Elsie delighted, and she begins smiling upon hearing this. Moreover, the patriarch also assigns Callie of making sure Nicholas fully understands the nature of vampires. And so, he dismisses all of them, claiming that Nicholas now has the full support of his house, and the trio leaves. This leaves Agoras alone in the room, and he leans back in his throne. However, he is not alone. Suddenly, a voice is heard, revealing that they are in quite a predicament because of Elsie. Behind Agoras, a shadowy figure appears, who had already expected Nicholas to accept, and well, not like the boy had any other choice. Moreover, this man compliments Agoras, claiming that he is quite the orator. However, according to him, he is a bit harsh on Eugen, apparently this guy's son. He tells Agoras to be lenient towards him, after all his marriage is one for political reasons and not for the sake of love. But Agoras refuses, stating that this has nothing to do with the relationship between him and the patriarch's daughter. Instead, he announces that every small seed of disrespect must be destroyed before it can grow into defiance. Regardless, this man begins to speak up again. He tells Agoras that when he first heard it, he almost couldn't believe the scenario. Elisa's blood, the blood of the previously lost house by the name of Nodvine, is not imbued in the vein of a knave. Suddenly, the man turns into a black mist, appearing on a different side of the throne he was originally standing at. Turning into a man once again, he feels flattered that he is the only one Agoras decides to confide in, but Agoras claims that there is a simple reason. He knows that nothing can be kept hidden from the ever-watching eyes of Avril, the patriarch of House Clavelis. On the other hand, Callie, Elise and Agoras head back from the Thorn Room. There, Nicholas begins thinking to himself. He thinks that of course, he accepted, seeing as he had no other choice now. For him, everything is proceeding too fast, and he cannot get his head around this whole ordeal, but despite this, he still hopes that there is a way for him to somehow get his old life back. As they walk, Elise intervenes in his thought process, asking if he is doing all right. But of course, Nicholas is pissed. He turns back to look at her with an eye filled with rage, proclaiming how she could ask him such a thing after all she has done to him. She has turned this famous actor into an undead, snatching away everything he has worked so hard at to achieve what he has so far. She undid everything he worked towards in a single night. Seeing him angry, Elise becomes shaken, claiming that she didn't intend for everything to turn out the way it did. But of course, the guy who lost his entire life isn't satisfied with such an answer. In the heat of the moment, he begins baring his fangs towards her, asking how it was meant to turn out. Suddenly, Callie intervenes. She tells Nicholas to put away his fangs, that is, unless he misses the feeling of Callie's cold blade inside his heart. She announces that, as Agoras already mentioned, the responsibility for this lies on the entire Hattonman family, and as such, they are all here to help him. Hearing her threat and recalling the experience of getting stabbed through the heart, Nicholas calms down a bit, leading to Callie comforting him. Nicholas is struggling to control his new nature as per Callie, and Nicholas agrees, as this isn't something one can simply prepare for. Because of this, Callie tells him that they will train. Even though unprepared as a mortal, the actor is now ready to withstand the training of vampires. Callie explains that vampires aren't just humans with superpowers, rather they are existence superior to humans in every way. Being strong and resilient is the first step towards this, and he claims that every vampire has a special gift or power. Hearing this, Nicholas turns his attention towards Elise, asking if the time she contacted him at the film event using thoughts was her power, and she confirms this, stating that can hear and project thoughts. Sometimes, she can even influence the emotions of her victims, if she tries hard. However, this only makes him even more enraged, as he accuses her of manipulating him. But Callie stops him, announcing that most cannot be changed. They must accept reality as it is. Moreover, seeing as the sun is about to rise, he tells Nicholas to get ready for his first rest as a vampire, revealing that it isn't all that akin to sleeping as a human. The dreams are bizarre and vivid. Hoping they aren't unpleasant, he tries to ease this newborn by telling him that they can even discuss the dreams in the morning if he wants to. As a result, Callie finally drops Nicholas at his new lodging, telling him to rest well as he has a long night ahead of him. As such, Nicholas goes to bed, where he soon realizes what Callie meant by dreams becoming bizarre and vivid. As he sleeps, he dreams of himself writing on a piece of paper with blood as ink. "Who am I?" the paper asks. Suddenly, another pair of hands come into view, belonging to a white silhouette of Elsie. Seeing this, Nicholas soon wakes up from his slumber, surprised at what he had dreamt of. Although it felt clear, as soon as he woke up, all the memories of his dream fade away from his mind. In addition, he hears a voice by his side. As he looks to see who it belongs to, he finds Elsie at his bedside waiting for his awakening. As she waves him a good morning, Nicholas gets shocked at her presence and asks if she ever gets tired of stalking him all the time. He asks what she wants now, learning that she brought him food. Although Elsie claims that she knocked on the door, Nicholas was deep asleep and didn't answer, leading her to enter on her own. Moreover, she even tried waking him up gently, but he once again failed to wake. Hearing this, Nicholas asks why she couldn't just leave the meal outside his door and must come in, and Elsie replies that, as it is his first time, she just wanted to make sure he ate well. Suddenly, the food she is talking about is revealed. It is seen to be a cup of blood, seeing which Nicholas becomes disgusted. He announces that he will not drink blood, and no one can force him, but regardless, his body is quite honest and begins to rumble. Furthermore, Callie is also seen present in the room. Hearing Nicholas's remarks about feeding, he deems Elsie's kindness to be wasted on an ungrateful guy like him. She was kind enough to bring him food to his bed, but he'd rather starve. This makes Callie comment on how he would have just dragged Nicholas to the dining area instead. However, seeing Kai in his room as well, he questions whether vampires really do need to be invited to enter a room, asking if these monsters know the meaning of privacy. But Callie refuses to give his statement any weight. She announces that Nicholas's survival depends on Callie and Elsie guiding him in his new life, whether he likes it or not, but Nicholas asks what if he doesn't want to live in the shadows of the night like a freak. Things start becoming confrontational between the two, but Elise intervenes. Coming between them both, she tells them to stop and begins apologizing to Nicholas. She accepts that she was acting selfishly and twisted Nicholas' wish to live forever into her own desire and claims she will apologize as many times as necessary. She knows that her favorite actor didn't ask for this kind of life, but regardless, there is nothing anyone can do. She promises that she will do whatever just takes to make this up to Nicholas after the dust caused by this storm settled, but for now, Nicholas must drink the blood. According to Elsie, vampires need to consume blood every night or else they begin getting aggressive. Not wanting Nicholas to lose to his starvation and not turn out to become the monster he hates, he must drink the blood. Not only that, if he refuses to drink, this will only give those who are hostile towards him even more of a reason to kill him, so, Elsie presents him with the cup and tells him to drink. On the other hand, Eugen is in his room. There, he seems to be furious that Nicholas has been spared. Not only is he an irregular, but he is also Elsie's progeny, and because of the involvement of Patriarch Agoras, he is unable to do anything to that white-haired son of a gun. As he remembers the time from the throne room, he gets more and more furious, damning the Patriarch and hoping he dies. As he throws his tie in a fit of rage, condemning everything and everyone, suddenly, his father appears out of nowhere. He announces that rage does not suit those of House Clavelis. His appearance surprises Eugen while his father continues giving his son some advice. He claims that a well-played hand will always be more effective than a closed fist and tells him to utilize information rather than anger. That is the way of the House Clavelis. With this he gets closer to his, stating that if Eugen wants to pull the curtain on the story of this poor actor, he must listen to everything he is saying very carefully, as Eugen pays close attention to every word that comes out of his father's mouth, sitting on the edge of his seat. Back to Nicholas, who at that item ended up drinking the day. Although it is unpleasant now, Elise claims that if vampires are hungry, they get the urge to attack, and if that happens, the vampire in question is immediately sentenced to death, even if they ultimately regain their rationality. This begins Nicholas's daily life as a vampire. Despite everything Elsie has done to him, and all the grief she has caused, she still does seem to genuinely care about him. As Nicholas begins his day, Callie begins to train him every single day. According to him, a vampire needs to train to hone his blood and power, claiming that all vampires know how to defend themselves and weakness is not allowed amongst predators. In addition, he reveals that fresh blood is always an easy target. Along with training, Nicholas undergoes studies with Elsie as his mentor, who teaches him all about vampire society, houses, titles, and about all the big names in the circle. One day, while Elsie is doing her job, she remarks Nicholas has already picked up on the things she has taught him about, commenting on how others usually take weeks. I guess it isn't all too different from memorizing lines. As his days continue, Nicholas begins to understand how enthusiastic Elsie is while helping him. At first, all she did was apologize to him, but after he asked her to stop, they began having a long, pleasant conversation. Even Agoros would greet him kindly, though his gaze always looks a tad bit cold. But there is one thing he is most thankful for, is not running into Eugen, which is in his opinion for the best. However, he learns that his production team is still looking for him, via the TV. Learning this, Nicholas decides to somehow escape from this place, but as of now, it's impossible. Nevertheless, if he can only get the vampire's trust, he might be able to find a way out. One day, as these thoughts rush his head, Elsie, who is currently teaching him, asks what he is thinking about. It is seen that Elsie has promised never to read his mind ever again, making Nicholas remember that he must keep his thoughts in check while with Elsie. Soon after, they complete their lesson, and Elsie, thinking he must be tired because of all the recent study and training, suggests they go take a walk in the mansion's gardens, and he agrees. As such, they begin to head towards the door and open it, finding that Eugen is on the other side waiting for them. Seeing him, Elsie is visibly taken aback and becomes startled, but she manages to keep her attitude towards him normal. Eugen profusely apologizes to her for his harsh words and flippant attitude, acknowledging that there was no reason for him to act so brashly. He comes closer to her, grabbing her arm. In response, Elsie replies that it is not a big deal, as she was the one who originally created this entire mess, but Eugen refuses to let this incident be dismissed so easily. He claims that as her fiancé, he must ensure Elsie's safety no matter what the circumstances. Getting right up in her face, he stares at her intently, making Elsie blush a bit. Turning his attention to Nicholas, who is standing right beside her, Eugen also apologizes to Nicholas for trying to kill him earlier. He announces that there is no excuse for his behavior and expresses his desire to try and improve things between both. He extends his hand towards Nicholas, who decides to give him a chance. Nicholas states that he doesn't want to create enemies over a misunderstanding and looks forward to getting to know Eugen. In his mind, Nicholas seems wary but thinks about Eugen's change in attitude, wondering what could have caused it. He concludes that the patriarch must have finally chewed him out. They both shake hands, publicly dismissing the bad blood between them. As a gesture of goodwill, Eugen takes out tickets for an event. These invitations are for the small event house Balcaster has called for the high-ranking vampires. Not only that, but Eugen has also brought enough for all three of them. Seeing these tickets, Elsie is surprised. She claims that the invitations for this event are incredibly hard to get one's hands on, prompting her to ask if he really brought them for her and Nicholas. Eugen confirms this, stating that actions speak louder than words. With this, he hands these invitations to Nicholas, announcing that this might be an excellent opportunity for them to introduce Nicholas to the vampire high society. Elsie thinks it's a great idea and praises Eugen. Although Nicholas thanks Eugen for the tickets, he asks if his house had to pull some strings for him to get his hands on them. But Eugen refuses this, stating that this is all the fruit of his own efforts. In their respective minds, they share animosity towards each other. While Eugene thinks Nicholas is provoking him, Nicholas understands that this glass is planning something but won't fall for it so easily. Regardless, Elsie cannot be more excited. She announces that she will have to tell Callie about this too since, although she is not too cozy with formal events, Callie is her bodyguard. Obviously, this invitation covers any security within the person, but Elsie wonders where Callie might be, thinking she would be with her. Elsewhere, Agoras is seen talking with Callie in the throne room. The patriarch explains that the blood of the lost house Nodvine flows within Elsie. The origin of her blood must be kept a secret to prevent terrible and uncontrollable powers from awakening. However, now that she has passed on the Nodvine blood to another, they will have to keep a close watch on Nicholas as well, or else the consequences could prove to be dire. As such, he appoints Callie as a guard between these two and the rest of the vampire world. Although they both understand the security threat, the main priority is Elsie. However, Callie must also protect Nicholas from danger with the utmost discretion. With this, Agoros places his trust in Callie, telling her not to make him regret his decision and to uphold the trust he has placed in her. He then provides Callie with further instructions, announcing that if Nicholas shows any signs of abnormality or asks too many questions, she should inform him. Moreover, he authorizes her to use drastic measures if she deems the situation requires it and promises her loyalty and blade to the patriarch in response. And so, she later heads to the library, where Elsie and Nicholas are seen studying. Elsie is excitedly teaching him about the different vampire families and their branches. She also quizzes him on the names of the patriarchs and other details. However, Callie, who has been silently waiting for them, tells them to hurry up as they are already late for training. They also need to buy formal wear today, leaving them with even less time to train. Hearing this, Elsie decides to ask just one more question, while Nicholas's brain is overwhelmed with all the studies. As he goes over the textbook, he notices something peculiar. Calling Elsie Lise, he asks about the family emblem with a skull in chains. He claims that he has seen this symbol in other books and asks her which family it belongs to. But Elsie is unable to respond. She blushes when Nicholas calls her Lise and becomes nervous. Because of this, she starts to blurt out her words, prompting Callie to tell him that it belongs to House Charvan, a house banished for over a century. Finally, Elsie regains control over her emotions and explains that she chose this family for the last topic because, although modern textbooks mention their name, they do not contain their history. This intrigues Nicholas, who questions if a house can be banned. Elsie explains that, despite its rarity, it does happen. The Charvan house was studying necromancy, seeking immortality. Therefore, they began to perform more and more gruesome experiments over time. Things eventually escalated too far, to the point where the Charvan house began threatening humans and vampires alike. As a result, the other major houses decided to sever Charvan from power and wealth to protect everyone. This led to them being scattered outside the cities. Furthermore, she claims that this is also something important to know. Even if no one wants to talk about it, it is part of vampire history. As she expresses her thoughts, Nicholas starts staring at her intently, making Elsie blush even more. However, Callie soon interrupts them, stating that they have many errands to run and cannot waste time soul-gazing. With this, Nicholas realizes what he was doing and becomes embarrassed, wondering what on earth has happened to him to see his captor in such a light. Meanwhile, Elsie is embarrassed, thinking about how this was the first time Nicholas stared at her in such a way. And so, they leave the library and head to buy some formal wear. There, Elsie wonders if they should get a ceremonial fencing foil, but Callie doesn't think it's a good idea. Since he is not a bodyguard, it would attract the wrong kind of attention, something Nicholas himself wants to avoid at all costs. Despite this, Elsie thinks it's a shame as he would look even more dashing than usual. As she says this, her face expresses soft emotions, and she smiles gently. Seeing her expression, Nicholas begins to stare at her once again. Later that day, Callie and Nicholas begin their training. While Eugen and Elsie watch them from the sidelines, the duo begins to spar where Nicholas seems to be having some issues. Stuck in a stalemate with no way of defeating his foe, he tries to parry Callie's attack, but it ends up backfiring instead. She trips him, rendering him useful as he falls and wins the duel. Of course, Nicholas calls this tactic unfair, but his teacher announces that no one cares. Will fairness really stop an attacker who is after Nicholas's life? As Callie helps him up, Eugen compliments the spar from afar. While Nicholas takes the compliment a bit passive-aggressively, Callie claims that the progress Nicholas is making in such a short time could mean he would soon be able to prove it as a challenge to Eugen. This brings the training session to an end and Elsie stands up excitedly, asking if they should now go shopping. However, Eugen stops her. He claims that he has already prepared. Announcing that Einchester's finest shops are waiting for them, he wants to help Nicholas relax by giving him a breath of fresh. He states that this city becomes dazzling tea night and Nicholas agrees this change of pace. But he has very unsettling thoughts about this. He even sees a ghost-like figure of Orville looming over Eugen, but regardless, they head out. And so, they head out to the mall, thanks to Eugen already preparing an escort for them. Not only that, but he has also already picked out all the spots. However, this all worries Callie, who is silently observing everything as of now. Nonetheless, he can't ignore this situation anymore, with Eugen acting all weird, and deems it necessary for her to report to Agoras. Regardless, they all soon begin shopping and before you know it, they are done as well. There, Nicholas thinks about how he could have escaped while they were just leisurely strolling around the city if it wasn't for Callie, who is constantly keeping her eye on him. Moreover, he wonders how, although the city begins quite big, no one recognized him, thinking that all the employees must also be in the vampire society. As these thoughts rush through his head, he contemplates whether he will ever be able to escape this place. However, his stream of depressing thoughts is broken by the arrival of Eugen and Elsie. It is seen that the gang is at the event already. At her arrival, Elsie begins glancing at Nicholas, blushing a bit after seeing him in his formal wear. But of course, her fiancé doesn't seem so happy about their chemistry. Anyway, he begins to explain the process of this event. He announces that first, they must visit and extend their greetings to the patriarch, telling Nicholas especially to act accordingly, and they begin their journey to the ballroom. As they walk, Nicholas is seen irritated at all the fuss about appearances, stating that it is almost like everyone has their role to play. The bodyguard, the lady's attendant and the perfect couple, everyone I made to act according to their role, akin to a theater in its own twisted way. Eventually, they reach the ballroom, where many people seem to be present. Even Orville and Agoras are seen there. Soon after, the announcer calls forth the host, Patriarch Dre Blanchester himself, who appears to address the crowd. There, Eugenia and Elsie both introduce themselves to the leader of the Blanchester house, who is delighted that the younger generations are also partaking in this event. Not only that, but Elsie also introduces her attendant, Callie, the body Giardia and Nicholas, her escort. With this, the attendants also bow down to greet the patriarch, where, upon seeing Nicholas, Dre begins to smile a bit. H announces that he is happy to see a bright face here and hopes this newborn enjoys the night. Slowly, the patriarch comes closer to him. However, other than small talk, Nicholas has no idea how to entertain this lord. Seeing him in trouble, Elsie decides to chime in. She claims that her fiancé wants to concur with the patriarch, telling Nicholas to politely stop using up the lord's time and accompany her for a drink instead. Of course, the former actor pounces on this opportunity and rushes to Elsie's side. After thanking Dre for showing interest towards him, he claims that he must attend to his duties and must leave. The patriarch also tells him to hurry up and go, stating that he will not keep him any longer. With this, Eugen then chimes in, engaging with the Lord of House Blanchester. As the two of them converse, Agoras watches them, intently from afar, whereas Dre looks to be bored out of his mind after talking with Eugen. While Elsie and Nicholas walk away, Agoras suddenly signals to Callie, telling her to come to talk to him. As such, she dismisses herself from watching over Elsie, telling them that Agoras is calling out to her. As such, Elsie states that she will be on the balcony, asking Nicholas if that would make for a peaceful break in this hectic event filled with the big shots, and they both leave. Meanwhile, Eugen seems at a table, exhausted. There, he is seen thinking who, although he was able to distract Dre, has now lost sight of his fiancée and Nicholas because of this. Not only that, but he also wonders what on earth is so special about that irregular that everyone begins fawning over him immediately. Even the patriarch of House Blanchester is interested in him, something which completely eludes Eugene's understanding of why. With this, he begins pouring himself a drink when suddenly, a note appears by his glass. Surprised, he opens this note, finding that it is telling him to be prepared. Seeing this message, Eugen becomes a bit distraught. On the other hand, Elsie and Nicholas are on the balcony chatting. As they gaze at the night sky, Nicholas asks why she took the chance to ditch Eugen earlier. As such, he replies that she needs to talk with Nicholas, freely and in private. She announces that she has been thinking very much lately, about how Nicholas wants to go back to his way of life. He didn't want to get dragged into this life, which is why, she thinks that letting him escape would be the right thing to do. Moreover, she also wants to help him do this. Elsewhere, Agoras is seen conversing with Callie. There, he tells Callie to keep an eye on the commotion in the hall, stating that everything is proceeding as expected. Moreover, he claims that Orville is also here, though he hasn't shown himself yet. That's why he suggests they limit direct communication. However, suddenly, their chat is interrupted by the yelling of a soldier. This soldier has spotted someone uninvited and claims he cannot enter without an invitation. As such, he tries to stop the intruder before he enters. Nevertheless, this intruder, seen to be a hooded, red-haired man, states that an invitation will be the least of their problems.